Time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Adam Mamawala. A very funny, very fun episode. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. Also, follow me on Instagram if you don't already. And if you're listening to this podcast, go over and watch it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Paul F Comedy. Give us a subscribe as well. It helps a lot. Everyone's listening now. You should go watch. It helps me monetize, and then I don't have to go back to being a lawyer. Like I said, follow Adam. Fun episode. Follow me on Instagram. If you review us, I will send you one of these cool, super cool, high-end Why Are You Awake pins. Actually, it's just that logo there. That's the logo. Just give us a review. Email it to me at pfarahvar@gmail.com, and I'll send you the cool pin. You'll be one of 50 people who have it. Maybe 100. I don't know. Go to my website, Paul F Comedy, for upcoming dates. I'll be on tour with Paul Ollinger as part of the Two Pauls One Show. On March 7th, we'll be in Downers Grove at Osterio by Capri. On the 8th, we'll be at Hobart Theater in Hobart, Indiana. And on the 9th, we'll be at Zany's in Old Town. That's a Sunday. Make sure you get your tickets. All the links are on my website, paulfcomedy.com. I'll be in Florida headlining McCurdy's on the 19th and the 23rd, which I think is a Wednesday and a Sunday. I'll be opening for Orny Adams the rest of the days, except on the 22nd, that Saturday, I'll be headlining Side Splitters at 5 p.m. Early show for all you early bird people or people that want to go out before they go partying. I don't know how Tampa works. Anyway, website, Paul F Comedy, for upcoming dates, including some upcoming dates in April in Boston. I'll be headlining, and then I'll be on tour again with Paul Ollinger at DC Loft in Washington, D.C. Make sure you also check out our sponsors. Hey, gang. As some of you know, I used to be a practicing lawyer in Chicago. I no longer practice, but from time to time, I need a lawyer. And when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. It's time for Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have one of the finest things to come out of New York City, Adam Mamawala.
Wow. That's high praise. There's a lot of things that have come out of New York City.
A lot. Yeah. Usually it's a lot easier when I say like smaller towns, but
sure, yeah.
I don't really know you grew up in New Jersey?
I was born in Illinois.
Okay. That's why you love the Chicago sports. Okay.
I was born in Aurora, which I always reference as the setting of Wayne's World, but then anyone under 30 doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's discouraging to me.
Sure.
I thought it was timeless, but I don't know.
No.
But I was born in Aurora, moved to New Jersey when I was 9, and then mostly grew up in New Jersey and then New York after that. So I've mostly been in the Northeast, but I still have Midwestern roots.
So we can't even say the best thing out of Aurora, really.
No, well, I don't know what else is from Aurora other than a fictional.
Comedian Ken Flores is from Aurora.
Oh, okay.
He's up and coming comedian, so.
More up and coming than me?
Yeah, now.
Shit.
More than all of us
combined.
He's selling out rooms.
I don't know who that is.
Although you crushed, you did a show tonight at Zany's in Old Town.
I did do
almost sold out.
Pretty close.
On a Sunday.
I feel good about that. You know, people talk about like Instagram versus reality. I feel like tonight was like reality versus reality. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If you like walked into that room, you'd be like, whoa, there's a lot of people here. This is great. If people knew the amount of work that I did to get, like, I am not kidding when I tell you that the amount of outreach that I did on like Facebook, like direct messages to people, texting people, messaging people, LinkedIn, like whatever I could find of people who are in the Chicago area of like, hey, I think you would enjoy this. Come out to a show.
Do you notice that I don't have a surprise on my face because I know exactly what you've done?
But I don't think other people realize that.
Yeah.
I don't think people get that.
The reality of it, it's funny because people are like, oh, that show looks awesome. But sometimes in this situation, from any angle you took a picture, it was packed.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to do the cheat where you like sneak up behind just the two people who are there. You always know.
Exactly.
Anytime you see that post in like
it's not that
a bar show.
You're like sold out show. It's like, is it? Adam, we first worked together I don't think I even knew who you were, and then you did my show. Is that right? Am I correct in remembering that?
I think because I know Curtis.
Yeah, I
from the
got
Laugh
pressured
Factory.
into putting you onto my show.
So you begrudgingly had me on your
I
show.
begrudgingly, because a lot of times I have a show at the Laugh Factory
Yeah.
called Stand Up, Sit Down, and I often have to just let the club put who they want on.
Sure.
On a show like that, it's hard because if someone isn't good, I interview them afterwards.
Yeah, that's tough.
And the
doing
crowd
an interview
hates
after
them.
they bomb
Yeah.
is bad.
So that's why I'm always like, who is it going to be? And I remember I was just like, well, if he sucks, we'll work around it.
Yeah.
And then someone vouched for you too. I was like, okay. And then you murdered.
I had a very
You
good
were-
set.
you had
That's like
really
a tape
good-
that I use.
Oh,
It's
it was
from that
great.
show.
And the
Yeah.
interview was great. It was so funny. I was like,
We had some very fun back and forth about fuckable presidents, as I
yes.
recall.
And then your answer was Taft, which is hilarious.
I just said whatever I thought would be the funniest, weirdest thing to say.
Such a good
Yeah.
line.
Chubby, you accused me of being a chubby chaser.
Chubby chaser, as you should.
Yeah.
Probably half the crowd didn't even know who he was. Yeah. They were too young. They don't remember Taft like you and I do.
No. Yeah, we we were there for all of it. The bathtub incident, the whole thing.
I know the bathtub
Yeah.
incident. See, what was your major in college?
I majored in communication studies with a minor in Italian.
Okay.
Why? Non lo so.
No, I can't even say it right.
It was very much the major of like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't technically be undeclared at this particular college, so I will major in communication.
Where'd you go to school?
Went to a school called the College of New Jersey. It's actually a good school. I feel like nobody knows about it. Like, it's one of those schools that I think suffers because the sports are irrelevant there. You know how some schools, like, everyone knows just because it's like, oh, I see them in March Madness every year. And
Yeah.
it's like a shit school, but people still know about it.
Austin Pay is one of those.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Like, why? I don't know anything about
NC State.
I don't know anything about Pepperdine other
Sure.
than that they
Actually, Pepperdine's really good.
it is a
at
good
lot
school.
of
But my point is,
things. So you
random
weren't
school.
smart then?
No, I was smart.
Full scholarship?
Yeah. My parents had a deal with my sister and I where they were like, we have saved enough money that if you go to school at a public school in state, we will be able to cover that for you.
Okay.
If you'll get scholarships and blah, blah, blah. If you choose to go elsewhere, you may do so, but it will be you taking out loans and paying it for yourself. So I think
So
at
they
that
put
point,
you in a good position.
well, I resented it a lot at the time. It's a huge blessing though to graduate without debt. Like
Oh,
that was
100%.
like one of the most helpful things in being able to pursue such an insane career.
We were talking about this weekend with another comedian, and everyone's like saying how shitty colleges, there's no need. And like, do I regret that I have a law degree? I'm like, no. Especially in times like now, you realize how important college is.
Yeah, it also like helps you form the person that you are.
Or like how to use your brain and like,
General education is important.
Yeah.
But also like, I don't know to what degree you feel like your law background helps you as a comic or like in your comedy career, but a lot of the stuff that I learned, because I was doing stuff that was like focused in like PR and mass communication. So it was like how to write a press release and like how to promote a business. And like, I'm literally doing that with myself all the time.
Yeah.
So it's that part, I feel like I got more useful knowledge to help me on the business side of comedy than like the comedy side.
I double majored poli-sci speech comm, but one of my jobs for internship was in New Jersey, in DC, working for Senator Bill Bradley.
Oh yeah,
who
yeah.
was from
Former
New Jersey.
Nick.
Yeah, former Nick from New Jersey. And I was his press release intern. So I did
Cool.
all press releases back then. When people will do press releases for stuff I do, I go, let me look at it because I can kind of make it shorter. Those are skills that we still use as comedians. As far as a law degree, I think that I was a trial litigator, so like thinking on your feet, obviously.
Sure.
responding
I mean,
to-
being able to be up in front of people. Like, you can't be a lawyer who has stage fright.
Yeah. Or just reading a room. I think that's a big thing too
Sure.
that a lot of comedians lack.
Can't crowd work this judge. You look at the judge and the bailiff, you're like, so you guys fucking? Or
That's all I did.
Yeah.
That's all I did.
so what do you do for a living? I'm literally a judge. You know what I do for a living.
What's up with the robe? You just doing stuff like nice robe. Who do you think you are? Queen of England? Well, I was going to ask you about your sister, but I already know now. Every comedian that we've had, most of the time, you're the youngest or an only child. But you're kind of closer in years to your sister.
3
So you're
years.
younger. Is she have a traditional job that would be accepted in the Indian community?
Well, the thing is, I was not subject to that expectation.
You say that on stage, yeah.
And I don't know how much of it is because like my dad is Indian and my mom is American. So like I don't come from a traditional background in that way anyway. But also like my dad isn't a doctor. He worked in insurance, but I think like there were never any expectations put on us for like what we were supposed to do with our lives. To answer your question, my sister does work in like a normal job, but she also is, I think, like a creative person.
How did that come about? Is that anyone in your family creative, or you just...
Yeah. Not in like a professional way, but I grew up around a lot of music. Like both of my parents are good singers and like love music. My sister and I were both in like choir and musicals and all that stuff. Nice. But also my parents are they're very smart and they're very funny. I think I get my stage presence more from my dad. Like he's a very gregarious sort of guy. Like he's the sort of person who he knows how to hold court. And my mom is one of these people where like she's very unassuming because she's like a tiny little Midwestern lady, and she'll say the funniest shit like under her breath, like that kind of when no one else is paying attention, that little sarcastic. Yeah. It's my girlfriend calls it low key shade. So I think I get more of my like wit and sarcasm from her. And I never met my grandma, her mother, but my mom has told me many times, she's like, she would have loved that you're a comedian. Like she had that sort of like wry sense of humor.
Yeah. And you, that joke you do kind of was funny where you're like, yeah, they're supporting me, so I'm not going to be successful. The premise is hilarious.
I mean, like, because how often 99% of the time you hear the story of like, you know, everyone told me that I was wasting my time and I would never make anything of myself, and I set out to like prove them wrong. And as for me, it's like, am I setting out to prove them right? Like, am I not going to be as successful as they assume I'll be? Right. That's insane.
When you were in high school and before, were you like ever a night owl?
No shot. Maybe the most traditional Indian thing about my upbringing, and I don't maybe it's not an Indian thing, but like there was no being out late without them knowing exactly where I were. And there was no tolerance of like drinking or any tomfoolery.
I didn't know you grew up in the 50s. Were you were you
got cool some real shenanigans, eh?
Were you a cool kid, or were you kind of nerdy in choir and stuff?
So you're going to learn my comedy origin story here. At first, when I entered high school, I was a chubby kid, more so than you could imagine.
Okay.
Like when I look back, there's a photo of me from when I'm in like 8th grade. I legitimately look like Manny from Modern Family.
Okay.
Like just like bulbous and
I was
wearing
fat
a
too
Hawaiian
in 8th
shirt.
grade. Yeah,
a lot of people, I mean the baby fat or whatever, but basically from like 7th grade through sophomore year of high school, I was like noticeably overweight. I wouldn't say I was like bullied. There was shit said to me in locker rooms that was not like particularly kind, and also stuff that you like probably wouldn't hear now. Between my sophomore and junior year, so like right at the halfway point of high school, but I like got it in my mind of like, I don't like how I look and I don't feel confident, and I'm like, I'm going to do something about it. Like overnight I was like, I don't want to look like this anymore, and I just was like, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight. And then over the course of basically a summer, I lost like 50 pounds.
Wow. How did you lose that?
I was really just doing what I would call like the common sense diet, which is like, we all know what we shouldn't. What do you say?
I was saying, make yourself throw up after every meal?
Yeah, I had a very early version of Ozempic, and it was the first, I was like part of the trial period for it.
What was the
like at that time I was young enough that I was like, oh, if I just change some things, if I cut out like soda, I cut out desserts, I was just very like careful about what I ate, I was exercising a lot. All to say, I go back to school as a junior, and this is in the day and age like before social media, and it was like a first day of school out of a movie where I'm like walking down the halls and everyone's like,
who's that?
It was insane. I basically became good looking like between 2 years of high school. I did not have the confidence to match it.
Sure.
I still had the mindset of the like chubby kid. People have like straight up told me this now that I'm friends with. They're like, you know that like all of us liked you.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's brutal.
Yeah. It's funny you have that story. A lot of comedians do.
For sure. Yeah.
We find ourselves, freshman year, I was like a nerdy kid. I was 4'11", 100 pounds, but I was kind of chubby.
Damn.
But then by junior year, I was like 117 pounds, but I was like 5'8".
But you still felt like a runt in your head.
Yeah, but I was also like so insecure. I was popular, but I was afraid of girls. Like I was friends with them. I was friend zoned.
Right.
But because I never knew how to
I friend zoned myself.
Right.
I would be the guy who like I would hang out with a girl and she would be having a good time, and I would be so afraid of like going in for a kiss, so I wouldn't do it.
Sure.
And then we hang out a second time and a third time, and by the third or fourth time when I'm not going in for a kiss, they're like, well, I guess he doesn't like me.
Yeah.
One thing that was nice about my grade was that like the kids who were the popular kids were also smart, so that was a nice thing where it wasn't just like the dumb football player was the most popular kid in school. It was people that I like had classes with. I feel the same way in comedy that I do or that I did in high school, where it's like all the popular kids are like nice to me. It's very clear to me that I'm not like part of their crew. I do. Like, I know who the cool kids are, and I don't feel like I'm one of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I can relate to everything you're saying, except that I was cool in high school.
When did you lose your virginity?
I was cool in every aspect, but with women.
Okay.
I lost my virginity till I was 18, maybe 19, because I don't even know if the first time counted. It's a long, complicated story that I tell on podcasts. But freshman year of college, I mean.
Gotcha.
How about you? Later than that?
Senior year of college, like a
wow.
month or two before I
might have
graduated.
the record. In comedy, there's certain patterns I've noticed in talking to people and the origin stories that you say. We weren't the funny kid in high school.
No.
Most stand-ups are not.
No.
Some come from like a theater background or whatever, and then other people were like jocks or whatever it was. There's something that connects us all together. And a lot of them, it's younger child or only child syndrome, and big into birth order. And a lot of it is just like this insecurity, and we use comedy to get there.
Totally. I mean, I think when I was heavier, I always knew how to make people laugh, but like it became a way to make people laugh on my terms.
Yeah.
You know, what's weird about it to me, and maybe I'm inventing all of this, is like there have been times where I have not felt liked by other comedians, and I think it's because they perceive me as someone that I'm not. I think I look a certain way. Comedians are, generally speaking, a group of misfits. It's a lot of people who didn't fit in when they were growing up, maybe got bullied when they were growing up. And unfortunately, and you know this, I'm sure there's this sort of stuff in Chicago too. Like sometimes for people, when they've been the butt of the joke and they've been bullied, all of a sudden when they have that power, they cannot wait to do it to someone else. And I feel like there are people who like resent my presence within comedy because they perceive me as like, oh, that's like one of those assholes who would have like been a dick to me in high school. It's like, no. I was fat and in musicals. You don't understand. Like, I'm not that.
If someone doesn't like me, I want to know why. And if they're accurate, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's good. You should.
Yeah.
You should. Not
I've tried to get better with like accepting that not everyone's going to like me, but I am a people pleaser, and like that's
it's
a hard thing to.
Yeah, it's hard to do, especially in comedy when you're like, that's all you're doing is trying to please people. Really.
Right.
What about college?
So in college, I definitely came into my own in college. Like thinking back as to who I was when I entered college and who I was when I left, it was like night and day, the confidence that I had. I mean, I attribute it to starting drinking probably, but
yeah, drinking was my crutch,
Sure.
and that made you build confidence.
Yeah, of course. I think drinking honestly was helpful to me because like I was way too in my own head about, oh, should I go in for the kiss or should I not? It's like 3 drinks will help you be like, yeah.
I don't care. Yeah.
Right. I always stayed up pretty late, even in high school, but it was like nerdy staying up late. It was like, I'm going to stay up late and watch the NBA alone. And then in college is when I started like going to parties and actually being out late. So yeah, I would say I started stand-up my freshman year of college. For the first couple of years, kind of like a hobby and like something I would do it. There was a coffee house at school. And then towards the second half of college, like junior, senior year, when I was like starting to get better at it and I was starting to get some feedback from people of like, oh, this like might be more than just you doing it as a hobby. Like you're pretty good at this. I would go into New York and do like bringer shows and that whole circuit. There were times where I would go into New York to do a show and then, you know, get like the last train back from New York to New Jersey. But
you said you started comedy freshman year of college.
Yeah.
When did you really start? Like, were you just going up every once in a while, or were you like going up weekly?
I don't think I could really say with any earnestness that I like really, really did comedy until post-college. Like knowing what I know now about what it takes to really be a comic, like you can't be doing it once every 2 or 3 weeks and think that that's what comedy is. But I won this like statewide competition when I was a junior called the New Jersey Comedy Festival. And they like went to all these different campuses and had like a first round show. And the finalists got to go to this, you know, the big show at the end. And I won that. And like, that was kind of the turning point of me starting to think more about like, is this something that I actually see myself doing? Towards the end, I was more going to open mics, even in New Jersey, like doing mics there and then going up to the city at least like once every couple weeks or once a month.
When did you stop doing choir, shit like that? Like,
I was in an a cappella group in college.
Okay, so that's where I'm getting to. Okay.
I would say that I was popular in college.
Well, everyone is popular in college. You just find your people.
I disagree, though. I think where I'll push back on that is that like I was involved in a lot of shit, and I knew a lot of different people from like different parts of my world.
Okay, a cappella. What were the other ones?
A cappella. I ran the club tennis team.
Oh, you played tennis? Did we talk about this?
Yeah, I think we did because you played competitively, right?
I did, yeah.
I was pretty good. I mean, I was like walk-on level. So I tried to get on the varsity team. I didn't get on. Head of club tennis, a cappella group, stand-up. And then I was an ambassador, which was, I don't know if you had this wherever you went to college, but it's like the people who like give the tours.
Oh yeah.
And then you also
They were
like
kinda
have
nerds.
freshmen. Nah, not at my school. Maybe, but I didn't have that perception. But we would
I'm
like
turning into a bully. I feel like on this podcast. Go
we
ahead.
give tours, and you would have like a freshman class that you like mentored and that sort of thing.
The a cappella group. I want to
Yeah.
ask you some questions about that.
By all means. Yeah.
Did they have parties afterwards? Because like when I think of a cappella,
Oh yeah, it was quite incestuous.
that movie Perfect.
Pitch Perfect?
Pitch Perfect.
So
Did you guys have
acapella
battles?
We did not have acapella battles. What's funny about acapella is that it was very reminiscent of my experience doing musical theater in high school, which is to say that some people are like me, where they're like, oh, this is a thing that's like fun and I can sing pretty well, and so it'll be a good time. And there's other people who are there like, this is my life.
Yeah.
The people who are like singing in movie theaters of Wicked right now, like those like theater people. In college, it was a weird combination of people like me who are like, yeah, I'm doing this because like it seems like a good hang and we'll have fun. And there were other people who like wanted to be professional singers.
So you wouldn't just sit around like harmonizing?
Like, yeah, like
nothing
no.
You had like outside interests?
Some people were like, let's go get blacked out. And other people were like, but I want to sing. There's actually a story that goes down in like our off-campus house lore. So I went to a school located near Trenton, New Jersey, and our group was predictably called the Trentones. We were looking for places to like rehearse in a quiet area, and I offered up my off-campus house. And there was this time where like we were all rehearsing. I don't think I had even told some of my roommates, which is probably kind of rude. And one of them came in as we were like in the middle of a song and got shushed in his own house. And he still like gives me shit about it 20 years later. He was like, I cannot tell you how weird it was to walk into my own house and just have 20 people singing in synchrony, getting mad at me for coming through the front
20
door.
people? And I always thought a cappella groups were like 4 to 8. Okay, what am I thinking? Oh, is that like a
Oh,
barbershop
you're thinking
quartet?
of yeah, which is specifically for
Okay.
quartet.
I
used to be in a barbershop quartet in Skokie,
I wasn't
Illinois.
good at math. Were you
In the
really?
movie. No, I was
Okay.
making the Usual Suspects reference, but it's obscure.
Okay, so a cappella group, they can.
I'm really
you can-
not selling the fact that I was cool by talking about the a cappella group, but
No, it's good. I mean, it's more of a
we were revered, loved.
by other a cappella groups.
Whoa, my God. There was a time we went to like an a cappella tournament. That was fucking wild.
So there is like the movie.
In that way, yes, kind of. There weren't like sing-offs.
You didn't drink in high school at
No.
all? Oh, okay.
I'd never had like a sip of alcohol
Yeah, you're
when
a
I went to
late
college.
bloomer. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean,
And it would affect up your voice too. I mean, as a baritone, you probably were you
Yeah.
a baritone?
I think I'm more of a baritone now. At that time, I was like a tenor.
So you graduate, you come into your own, you lose
For
your
sure.
virginity.
Yeah.
You're on the real world. You graduate in 4 years.
Summa cum laude. But
Did
who's
you really?
counting? Yeah.
Oh, so you were smart. What'd you get in your ACT? Did you take ACTs there?
On my SAT.
SAT.
1430
Yeah, you're.
out of 1600.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I was top 10% of my high school class.
It was New Jersey,
and-
though.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
So you graduate college,
Yeah.
top of your class.
not that it mattered given what I chose to do with my life.
That's not true. I think it comes into play in terms of your level of comedy.
I think so. Yeah. I would,
What'd you do right out of college? You get a job?
No. So I graduated in 2009 into an economic crisis. So I have often speculated that like I don't know if I would have had the balls to do comedy if I had thought I had any other options. Like
Yeah.
I didn't have any other prospects. Like I think we all had been sold this false bill of goods about like, well, you just get a college degree and then there will
Yeah.
be jobs to be had. And
That's
when
right. I forgot about
so
that.
this was like a year after the housing crisis and the economy basically collapsed. When I graduated, quite literally the only real job offer I had was to be the manager of a Target. I had gone to like
Wow.
a job fair and somehow talked to these people because I think I thought it was like Target corporate, but it was just like
store.
manage a Target. Let me just take a minute to say, how insane would it be to be managed by a 22-year-old manager at a Target?
Yeah.
If you're like some 60-year-old woman who works there. That
Sure.
sounds like a horrible dynamic. Towards the end of, like, it was in my last semester that I just had this kind of epiphany of like, I think this is the thing. And it seems like I'm probably going to be broke anyway. So I think I'm going to go for it.
Well, your other option was what? A cappella?
Well, it's a tough grind out there. I would have to ask them what their memory of it is, but I feel like I almost like sat my parents down and was like, I think I'm going to pursue
And they were cool with
comedy.
it? Cool
With
went up-
conditions. I
yeah.
think they were like, first of all, you are finishing school.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a question. They're like, Just
Well,
to
you
be
were
clear,
already-
like,
yeah,
yeah, of course. It would have been insane for me to drop out at that point. But like their support would have not been the same if I had, as a sophomore, been like, I'm really into comedy. I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I lived with them for a year, and their deal was like, you can come back and live with us for 1 year free of charge. They always had these like rules. They're like, if you want to stay longer than that, like you have to start contributing financially, which frankly, like good.
Yeah.
That's, like, way too many parents enable their kids like mooching off of them
There
indefinitely.
are people still like 5 years into comedy that are still on their parents'
Yeah,
time.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I've never had like a real job in my life. I always taught tennis, which is like a pretty nice
Very
gig,
good
as
money.
you know.
Yeah,
It's good money.
I taught tennis too. Yeah.
I taught tennis lessons. I got a retail job. I worked at Lucky Brand Jeans at the mall. I did SAT tutoring for Princeton Review.
Well, Lucky Brand was big in 2009. To be fair.
Oh yeah.
They were
They
big.
had that the fly. It said Lucky You. So if you're getting blown,
I never knew that.
the person would feel
I
jazzed.
had Lucky Jeans and I never noticed that,
Yeah.
but I never got blown, so I
Sure.
wouldn't know.
That tracks.
So you're doing all the odd jobs. You're living with your family
But
for a year.
to be clear, I'm also doing comedy. I'm like
yeah. Doing comedy in New York. You're taking the train in New York.
Yeah, so I would go up to New York when I could, and then doing stuff in like the local scene in New Jersey. I was getting like more keyed into who the other comics in New Jersey were, and there was like a decent scene in New Jersey. There's been some like good comics that have come out of that. The other thing that I did, I got it in my mind that like I should do college gigs, and the rationale was really just as simple as like, I've performed a lot at my own college, so like I know
And
how to
you're
talk
young,
to. I'm young, and I know how to talk to college audiences. So theoretically, I would be successful at other colleges. I was always like very kind of business minded about it, which I think served me well. So I reached out to someone I knew on the campus activities board at my own college, and I was like, do you know of any comedians that you think would like talk to me if I wanted to just like pick their brain and ask them like
For
how they
NACA
do
stuff.
it? Yeah, for any of it. And so she was like, yeah, there's a guy, this comedian Jay Black. I don't know if you're familiar with Jay. Very funny guy, and he was actually an alum of the school. And she's like, yeah, we've had Jay a bunch, and like he's a really nice guy. I bet he would talk to you. So I reached out to Jay. And for no reason at all, he took like an hour of his time, and we talked on the phone, and he like kind of ran me through like what I should be doing. And I reached out to, it was like maybe 3 or 4 people that I just sent like a cold email, and I was like, you're doing what I want to do. Can I ask you about it? And most of the people that I reached out to were very nice. And I try to do the same. Like if anyone reaches out to me now, like I try to pay that forward. I did a NACA conference less than a year out of college. So I graduated in like May of 2009.
And you were only doing comedy for like 3-4 years.
Yeah. I did record an album in college, which is insane. The hubris involved in thinking that I would have any reason to be doing that. Ridiculous to me. But so I do this showcase like 9 months out of college, and I book like 7-8 gigs.
That's awesome.
So I'm basically going from never having been paid to do comedy to making like $1,300. And I was like, I'm a millionaire. Because at that point in your life, like $1,000 is that's
your
insane.
First job.
Yeah. But I had this weird trajectory where like I started having a good amount of success pretty early with colleges. So I'm like touring, making good money, and doing long sets long before I had any business doing them. So I was doing this for like a couple of years, still living in New Jersey. Wow. And then when I moved to New York, I like already was making a living as a comic before I had earned it, arguably.
Before you were doing the clubs, you had learned a way to...
Yeah, I had kind of like circumvented the normal process of doing things. And I do not think people liked that at all. I feel like it took me years.
They said you didn't pay your dues and shit.
Exactly. It took me years, I think, in New York to get rid of that.
I think people feel that way about anyone that gets something too soon. So you go to New York, and at that point, you're doing bringer shows still.
So I kind of did like a half move, right? So when I started making money, and also just
through
like,
NACA, you're talking about.
Through NACA, yeah.
That's
and then
a
also
college booking, by the way.
Yes, the National Association of Campus Activities for Inquiring Minds. I was starting to make enough money that I should move out. Even at that time, I still had this feeling of like, I need to be closer to New York. Like, I feel like I'm missing something by not being there. So I moved to Hoboken, which is like right across the river from New York. So it was kind of that like half step. And at that point, that's when I started like going into New York and just not even doing bringers. Occasionally I would still do them, but I had figured out by then that like bringers were a fucking racket and just like the scummiest people on earth run them. And I still harbor resentments from 20 years ago from some of those experiences. Yeah, I started doing mics and was bombing my fucking dick off.
Yeah.
Not only was I bombing, but like it very much felt like people did not
personal. Like yeah, sure.
And I remember the first open mic that I did was at this like hookah lounge it was called Karma Lounge on like First and First in New York. And I wanted to impress all these comedians who didn't know me. And so everyone's like working on their material. And I went up and just tried to do like the best 5 minutes I had. And it was excruciating. Like
in the
just
sense that
dead quiet and people being like, what are you doing? And we don't like you.
Was it because you were too polished, you think? Or was it because
it was both because I was too polished and because I was trying to be polished, which is like not what you do at an open mic. I think there's something to be said for having that like a group of comics that you're all at the same level and you all like come up together.
Yeah.
And when I see the people now who are like the big dogs in New York, like the, you know, Mark Norman and Sam Morril and Joe List and like all those people of that crew, it's such a ridiculous thing to say in the trenches, but they were all like in the trenches together in New York.
Helping. Yeah. They helped each other out.
Grinding it out and doing 10 mics a day. I never had that because like I was at a talent level that was on par with a lot of the people that I was at, but I was in this weird other category where I was like already a working comic.
Similarly, when I started, I was a lawyer, so I was practicing law.
Right.
I wasn't hanging out with people after my shows because I was like, I have to wake up and go to court.
Sure.
And I was also I started later in life, so I didn't have people to work shit on together until later, and then you find those people anyway.
Yeah, it's almost like the comedy equivalent of like if you started going to college when you were 32. Yeah, like you're not just gonna be friends with all the 18-year-olds because it would be weird.
It kind of helped me later in life because a lot of the comedians I end up opening for, I was the same age as them.
Sure.
So they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "I just started," and like, "Oh." Like we could talk about the same things. We both saw Wayne's World, you know, so we're already on the same page.
So you didn't do. When did you start comedy?
I didn't start comedy till I was like 37.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm 37 right now.
I know. Imagine that. Let me ask you this: so you start doing comedy in New York. You still had all those different jobs during the day.
Within the first year, I was starting to get enough college gigs that I was like, I don't need to do this other stuff anymore.
They fly you out. You're doing all these schools.
It was insane.
What were you doing on those campuses? Because you were relatively the same age as them, so it's not too weird to go out. I mean, with them
I'm being honest with you, I was doing things that I should not have been doing. I would like go party with the kids after
the shows.
Like, I mean, there are a couple times I like hooked up with people.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I'm 24 and they're 22. It's not.
Why shouldn't you have been doing that? You're supposed to.
Because that's a very easy way to get blackballed out of that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's more so if there's some like 40-year-old who's trying to be creepy around people. But I think.
Why'd you look at me when you said that? That's not cool. Anyway, no.
Well, because I know you've only been doing comedy 3 years and you're 40.
Good save.
Like the not shitting where you eat. So don't give people a reason to like be like, oh, this is not a good person to have on your campus. This was still like kind of before social media. I have no doubt that if this were happening now, there would have been pictures of me on like Instagram partying with students, and it would have been a big problem.
Blackface, you would have been canceled.
Well, sure. I don't have to do, I'm already brown, so I only have to do a little bit more.
A couple layers. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So to be clear, it was not like all the time, but I was, in that context, I'm like the cool guy who's there, and they're like, hey, can you come party with us? Like, oh my God. So there was that excitement of like, oh, we're hanging out with the comedian.
It's like the headliner at a club.
That was what was so interesting, was that like I had already had that experience of being treated like the man. And then I went to New York and I was treated like whatever the opposite of that is.
Now you're touring as a comedian. You're obviously here. What are you doing now when you're going to these cities after your shows?
I'll like hang out with people and like have drinks with friends, but I have no interest in just like going to a random bar and like sitting there by myself or trying to hang out with people from the show.
Obviously now you do that, but how did you learn that that's not a good thing to do?
I was married and now I'm in...
What?
Do you not know that?
No.
Yeah. My last album, like at least half of it is about
When
divorce.
Did you get married?
I got married in 2016 and divorced in 2019. Considering the relationship I'm in now and my previous relationship, which was a marriage that ended in divorce, I've essentially been in a committed relationship for the past 12 years with like a 1-year break.
You could never do my old podcast, Singles Only, then. That's all about dating. How do you maintain a relationship, even now or back then, as a comedian? Regular people, or were they in the creative world?
Both normies.
How do you do that with our schedule?
It's challenging. It was a major contributing factor in me not being married. I don't think that people understand, if you're dating a comedian, it's all very fun in the beginning, and then it's not. And the other thing about it is, like, when I was with my ex, I was still like building up my career. You know what I mean? Like
You're on
I
the
was
projection up.
Yeah, I was making some money. I was still very much in the mindset of like, I got to be out every night doing open mics in New York and like hanging out and just doing that, because otherwise I'm not going to get anywhere. I do think there came a point where, and I'm sure she said this to me, like I'm second to comedy. Like you always put me second to comedy. That's hard. I get that.
Yeah.
I think now, like, I'm in a relationship where I am divorced. I'm dating a person who's also divorced. And so we both have like, I don't want to even call it baggage because that sounds negative. Like because we've both been through our own stuff.
Your starter marriages have been completed.
Exactly. And I use that term and I co-sign it for sure. So I think everybody needs to start a marriage.
For me, I like to find people who have another priority too. Like whether it's their career oriented or they have a child or some other passion, so they understand it.
I think what's interesting about my current relationship is that we met during COVID. So like my life now is very, very different from how my life was then. And I think she knew that. And it was like a conversation that we had a lot.
A lot more days off.
Of course. Yeah. And I mean, I was doing like Zoom shows and outdoor shows, but I could do a Zoom show from an apartment. And we had conversations early on where she was like, this is great, but like, I know that this is not real life. Like, I know that you're going to be gone a lot more and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a challenge. She works remotely, so like there are times where she's able to come with me on the road. But I think the biggest difference that makes this relationship work is like the trust factor.
Right.
Because if you're going to be with a comic and they're on the road a lot, and like even for people who are not famous, like if you want to be that person who's trying to get laid after the show, like it's not that hard. Like, let's be honest.
No.
So you need to be with someone who's understands that like that's not what you're about.
Yeah.
I had this kind of like brief window. It's funny, before we started recording, you were talking about like all the things you wanted to like do in 2020. I signed my final divorce papers on March 12th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
Like literally a day or two before the
world
entire
changed.
world stopped.
That's crazy.
And I had, in my mind, I had told myself like, I know you're like a relationship oriented person and you're going to want to like put this energy somewhere, but like don't do that. See what it's like to be single in New York. You've never done that before. Doesn't mean you have to like sleep with a different person every night, but like see what it's like to be out and about.
Sure.
And so I got like a few months of that, like post separation, pre divorce and COVID. I was like out and about a little bit, but I don't think I'm built for modern dating, if I'm being honest with you. I'm too guilty to be able to like date 3 people at the same time and then decide that I like one of them more than the other 2. Like
you can never go on The Bachelor.
Callous.
After shows, then before
I like to hang. Let me say that. I love to hang with comics. That's what I want to do.
People don't understand how lucky we are when we do that. Like anytime that's an opportunity, like people will be like, "Hey, can I meet you after the show?" I'm just like, I want to see what everyone else is doing. Like it's such it's so important, not only for career wise, but it's just fun. You're with the funniest.
Well, they're
people
smart
in the
and
world.
They're funny
not
and
always,
they're good time. I mean, some of them. I think you're
Drew
like
Dunn is not smart. Come on, between us, girl. No, I'm just kidding.
What a loser! Trying to do an impression of Drew doing Trump.
Yeah.
But I think you're someone who you're not on all the time.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around someone like that.
Comedians, most comedians, if you've been doing it for 5 years, 7 years or more, they're not trying to make the other comedians laugh. They just want to chill and that's why I love smoking cigars now after shows. It's just like, I don't drink. So I'm just like, this is a good way to fucking hang out.
That was something where when everything shut down, which is now almost 5 years ago, which is crazy. I think I didn't realize how much I valued that. Because I found myself like, of course I missed comedy, but I really fucking missed the green room. I missed the hangs. Like I started up all these like Instagram live shows and stuff, just like to have a reason to try to replicate
the hang,
that experience. And hopefully I'll not like take that for granted anymore. But those are some of my favorite memories of comedy. It's just that, like just chopping it up with people, like talking comedy.
After the shows, if you're in a town where you don't know the comedians, what are you doing after the shows in your hotel? Are you going back to the hotel room? Are you going out, go to a bar, just watching a game?
Yeah, I guess it depends. No, not writing. Certainly not after the show. I mean, if I have the energy, I'm someone who like, I really, I try to take advantage of where I am. Even when I was like young and doing college gigs, I am kind of like a history nerd. So like anytime I was somewhere interesting, like I remember doing gigs at like Salem State University in Massachusetts. I was like, this is Salem. Some shit went down here. I'm going to go see what's up. To the point where like I would sometimes be like the young person on a tour where everyone else was like 80 and they're like, what are you doing here? I remember taking a tour of FDR's house. And like everybody else there was in a wheelchair, basically FDR cosplay, which is kind of fucked up if you think about it. But they like everyone would be so confused. I remember this one time, sometimes you would do gigs where like you had to book your own hotel and you were in the middle of fucking nowhere. So like there was nowhere to go. And so I just booked like a bed and breakfast because it was the only thing I could find just alone as a 23-year-old, and everybody else is like a 65-year-old couple. And I remember one time I came down to get breakfast in the morning and I just heard this, you know, in the way that like older people like think they're whispering, but they're just fully talking. She's like, there's a man down here. She just thought I was some like rogue trying to steal muffins from the bed and breakfast.
Let's say you're in a small town in Wisconsin, you're doing a show, everything's closed. What are you doing?
Well,
do you eat before your shows or do you eat after your shows?
I eat before my shows, but like long enough before that I don't feel gross.
Fair.
I used to do a lot of like gnarly late night eating. I'm trying to not do that because I'm not a young man anymore, and I can tell when it
hurts a lot.
Yeah, it's bad. It's not even. I mean, partially it's that you feel shitty the next morning, but it's like there's nothing better when you're a comic on the road. You'll do that thing where you go to like a 7-Eleven and get a bunch of like absolute dog shit and like leave it in your hotel room, and you're just thinking about that the whole night, waiting to get back. Go back. I would do something like that.
That's like well prepared. I'm not that prepared. I'm always like, what's going to be open when I get off stage? And I always ask people where I can go in those towns. It's usually like, well, in the South you have Waffle House, which is great, or Wawa, but
yeah, I would always try to make a point of being like, what is the thing that, is there like a thing that I'm supposed to have in this city? Because I want to try that. And when I was doing colleges, a lot of times they would like take you out to eat with the staff before or after the show. Yeah. So
when are you creative then? If you're not writing after shows, when are the times that you are writing?
I am not creative in a structured way. I'm not one of those people who like, I get up every morning and I like write for half an hour. I kind of just like write on the fly. I don't even like write stuff down. I have like, it's just like a notes app, which scares me sometimes because I'm like, if I lose that, I'm really in
back
trouble.
It up every year.
Yeah. For me, it's more like experiential where like I'm not seeking it out, but sometimes things will happen and I'm like, oh, that's very funny. And I also think that when you've been doing it long enough, your brain just starts to operate in that way where you're seeing things through a lens that not everybody else does. Where most normal people experience funny things and they go tell their wife about it, but then after that they don't think about it again. Whereas for us, we're like, oh, that's something.
We're gonna write this down and try it tonight.
Yeah.
And you're at the point where you can just riff in the beginning of a show about something that you wanted to talk about.
I stopped doing. I think I'd still been doing mics up until COVID. Like around that time, I would still do maybe like one every couple of weeks, but very much like I would only do mics where I felt like my peers were there. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to be doing something where it was someone who like just started out.
Sure.
Not because I'm better than anybody, but just like I want to be with people who are part of my like class of comedians. And then once COVID began, I was like, I'm not doing this ever again. I think now I'll do like a bar show has become my open mic.
Yeah. There's a couple open mics in Chicago I'll do. And the Laugh Factory has one that it's on if you're already on the show that night, you can stay and do it.
Yeah.
And it's a crowd of real people, so you can try shit out there. But I really appreciate you. I kept you long. I'm sorry.
No. We're having a good chat.
Where can people find out more about you and your upcoming shows?
Just type my name into the internet and it'll be very easy to find. So it's I'm sure it'll be on when you post it.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I'll put it right here.
Yeah. Adam Mamawala on Instagram. AdamMamawala.com is my website. If you go to AdamMamawala.com/standup, you can see where I'll be, and then I have a mailing list. So that's like the easiest way if you want to check out.
Well, thanks for doing the podcast. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for watching or listening. Go to sleep.